All right, we are live with another episode. And on today's episode, I interview a yogi, a musician, and martial artist, karate, kung fu, and tai chi. He's been practicing Ashtanga yoga since 1976 and teaching worldwide since 1979. He teaches all levels of students and teachers and was in one of the earliest groups of Westerners to learn all the classical sequences of Ashtanga yoga. His influences in spirituality have come from Krishnamurti, teachings of Buddha, Jesus, Shiva, yoga, as well as numerous shamanic traditions. His latest album is called Caravan of Souls, which is a collaborative effort with musical friends from around the world. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Danny Paradise.
Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you, Derek.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I've heard a lot of great things from you, from my teacher and friend Ryan Lear. So I'm excited to get to know you and explore your hero's journey, which I know has been an incredible one. Many various hero's journeys you've been on. So the goal of these conversations is to really uplift, inspire, and empower listeners to move forward with greater faith and belief in themselves on their hero's journey now. And as such, the conversations are all pretty positive. And my first question that I ask to everyone sets up us up as such, and that is, Danny, what do you love about your world right now? And not about the external world, but what do you love, Danny, about your personal world right now?
Oh, well, I'm very fortunate to be able to live in nature when I'm not traveling and recover the energy of nature from long trips that I've taken and travels around the world. I'm blessed to have learned yoga and play music, and I live in a clean environment, fortunately, and that's very powerful for me every day to breathe clean air and have clean water.
Mhm.
Even though, of course, we know affected by pollution and microplastics. But yeah, it's a blessing for me to be able to go to be invited to go to other countries to teach and uh, kind of introduce some different ideas sometimes into the conversation about yoga and consciousness and evolution. So it's a great blessing to be here now and to be alive. I really appreciate that's probably the best thing. I feel
Mhm.
good today.
Yeah,
So that's
yes.
great.
Yes, you're very fortunate to live so close to nature. You're in Hawaii, which is very blessed place, a very sacred land. Another question I ask every guest at the start of the interview is pertaining to their personal mission, and that is their mission that guides them in everything that they do. So that guides you as a yogi, that guides you as a musician, as a martial artist, as a human being on this planet. So, Danny, what would you say is your current mission here in this reality?
Well, I suppose it's evolving and changing as I get older and have a little more experience. But I'm just trying to pass on what I've learned and what I have integrated into my own studies and practices. And fortunately, I've been able to travel the world for like 50 years um, and connect with wonderful people all over the world interested in yoga or the healing arts. Um, so I just try to take a little of what I've gathered and pass it on for evolution, like I mentioned earlier, for awareness and sensitivity and getting in tune with the environment and helping clean up the environment and in whatever small ways every individual can uh, to use a voice to help change things for the better because there's a lot of deterioration going on all over the world, as we know. So yoga is I'm I'm so lucky to have learned from great teachers and be able to integrate um, martial arts into a yoga practice and also into passing on some of those aspects as well. So it's physical and it's um, thoughtful, I think, and it's provocative to enter into the world of consciousness that yoga can create through breath and pranayama and all these other aspects, tuning people into the present and really dropping them deeply into the present and eternity, because that's where we are.
Absolutely. So yoga is going to be a predominant topic of this conversation. How would you explain yoga to someone who knows nothing or very little about yoga? What is that?
Well, I want to say I know very little about yoga. It's this endless exploration of learning how to live positively and with vital energy and to age with vitality. It's an exploration of technique and thought processes and meditation. Maybe helping understand the idea that we can communicate with the spirit of nature, and receive messages from nature, and in meditation link into other realms of being and consciousness to help us live our lives positively, and hopefully recognizing that everything is a state of meditation. So it's all kind of learning how to be in the present. Certainly, the physical aspects of the practice really root people in the present, because they can be so concentrated and demanding. So it really is a force for learning how to be in the present. And I think as I keep getting older in these practices, I recognize how powerful they are for aging and beneficial. So that's one of the amazing things, that every day that I can do a little yoga, I can just feel the powerful effects through the breath and the movement and the stimulation of the nervous system, the skeletal system, the glandular system. So these are all aspects of yoga, but it goes on, it's endless. I also tell people it's linked to shamanic teachings all over the world. And it's just another shamanic practice that was investigated by a living culture, an ancient culture that still is living and growing. And then the teachings have, of course, extended all over the world. So everybody, whether they know it or not, whether they walk into just a purely physical class that's teaching some breath work and some of the aspects of movements, it's still changing consciousness. It has this very powerful effect on brainwave pulse and the ability to receive information, you could say, and to calm the body down and the mind down.
Yeah,
so go on, sorry.
No, I really am thankful for that response. And it kind of shines light on yoga is so much more than just what kind of the mainstream represents it as. And that's just like the postures, the asanas, the physical practice. And it has such a great, immense, kind of like you said, infinite depth to it, that I'm excited to explore further with you.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe we'll start most accessible and then we'll widen the picture. And I feel that most accessible to the general person is just the physical postures. And that's how my yoga practice began, and yours as well, I believe, when you went to a class with your girlfriend at that time on the island, and it was actually you learned Ashtanga. So yeah, let's kind of just delve into the beginning of your understanding of yoga and how that expanded.
Well, it was very expansive right from the beginning, because I became friends with the teachers, and just learning the practice slowly. I recognized right away how powerful it was, and they were very gentle. And that was David Williams and Nancy Gilgoff, and Nancy just passed away, unfortunately, a month ago or a few weeks ago. But they were they remained gifted teachers throughout their life. And at the time, there was a group of kind of thoughtful kids and older people that were around when I was learning. One of them was a renunciate renunciate sadhu called Cliff Barber, who had studied yoga extensively as well. And right from the beginning, we were told that it's more than just the asanas. The asanas are a doorway, but it has many more implications. Just so much more on, like I mentioned earlier, changes in consciousness and the ability to recognize the depth of meditation in any situation that you're in. So it was it was a beautiful introduction to the form and how you could progress at it if you were careful and observant, and the body could strengthen, and you could calm your nervous system down and bring it into balance and slow down essentially. So with very deep, powerful, progressive movements that came from ancestral ideas, but in particular Krishnamacharya.
Is that what hooked you? After your first yoga practice, were you hooked that first time from the sense of inner peace and calm that you were able to tap into for maybe moments, maybe minutes, I don't know how long during that first practice? Yeah, what hooked you? What piqued your interest to continue to unravel that thread that is yoga?
Well, if you know, it was I recognized the depth of it that I'd done martial arts and swimming, all kinds of other sports, and but I recognize its connection perhaps with very deep martial arts teaching, or 20 seconds, maybe even less. I started sweating in the practice with the combination of the movement and the breath. And it was so linked to breath, that was a whole new thing. And they were just David and Nancy were very gentle, and they just taught us a little bit at the start and then wanted everybody to finish. But it was a cool group of kids and freaks and surfers and criminals from all over the world doing yoga outside. All these young people that had come to Hawaii, to Maui, and recently. So it was an interesting group, and people looking for something different. And nobody had ever experienced this kind of depth in the practice in yoga. Also, they had done some yoga, so it was another level. But every day they were very careful on how much they gave each participant, and then encouraged us to stop. And then every day people came back, and they also maybe you heard when they first taught, they said you can come and give a donation, but we want you to come every day, 6 days a week for the next 24 weeks or a month. So people were committing to trying it. And he also said, even if you don't want to do yoga, David mentioned, you can just come to the class and say, I can't do it today, but just show up.
Yeah.
So it was all very encouraging and positive. And of course, because we were learning slowly, and everybody was in relatively good shape, because most people were young. There were surfers and all kinds of different levels of practice and ages and levels of physical ability, but everybody became stronger very quickly. It was clear to see that this was kind of an evolutionary science.
So what were your major takeaways that you learned from David and then also Nancy? So maybe like the predominant learning you've learned from David and a predominant learning you learned from Nancy that you've incorporated into your being as a yogi and as a teacher.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot from both of them. Gentleness was one of the things, and understanding the meditative nature of practice and being very conscious of what was going on during the practice, or trying to be, and seeing and honoring the changes that you were going through. And if you would, if you got physically tired, you'd stop. And they encouraged us, certainly if you it pulled a muscle or something strained in a movement, they had us stop right away that day and finish and lie down. The importance of resting, and allowing your body to absorb everything that you do in the practice. That's in the corpse pose at the end was a kind of a critical understanding as well, because that's no matter if you do 10 minutes or you do 2 hours, that's when the body really absorbs the healing force. So they were both very well read on the scriptures and all the texts in yoga, as well as our friend Cliff that was attending the classes, and he was like 20 years older, but had been doing yoga also for 9 years, from integral hatha yoga of Swami Satchidananda. So he was deep into yoga every day in pranayama, but this took it to a new level. Learning the sequential patterns that Krishnamacharya had, I think, first introduced to Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois. So, it was, I'd studied martial arts like you. You do jujitsu, right?
Yeah, jujitsu, Muay Thai, mixed martial arts. I'm a jujitsu black belt, and yeah, I've been doing mixed martial arts for the last 15 years.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I studied karate in Canada, in Toronto, with Masami Soroka, who was the father of karate in Canada. And I started when I was a kid, so I understood. I relate martial arts has got some links to yoga, and certainly there were movements in the yoga that I'd done in martial arts, and vice versa. And so I understood the depth of the discipline and of the idea of learning a form that you ultimately you could do yourself. And I thought that was probably the most important aspect of it. That you didn't need a guru, you didn't need to carry on with anybody for the rest of your life. I wasn't into having a guru in any shape or form, although I respect all teachers and I'm happy to study with them and learn what anything I can. But I certainly wanted to be able to do it myself, and I recognized that was the main issue. Whereas there were a lot of people coming through Maui and the Hawaiian Islands at the time that were spiritual leaders or gurus, and people would flock to their talks, and they had disciples around them, and it was all very weird.
Yeah.
At least a lot of it. So I appreciated that yoga was something that created independence and freedom. You learned, and that was I think the gift that Krishnamacharya was passing on, was learn a technique that you can do yourself, and come back to the teacher to refine it further, but learn it and be free. And this was immediately that's probably the thing that attracted me most. And also, since we were kind of talking about it, David and Nancy had spent a lot of time going overland from Europe to India, and studying in India and traveling to other places in India. And I had, just a few years before, I'd gone around the world when I was 19 and went to Europe from Canada and North America, and then decided to go to Asia. But this was in 1970, 71. So I went to Thailand and from Europe, and then Hong Kong and Taiwan and Japan. And I just hitchhiked around those countries, not in Hong Kong, but I hitchhiked around Japan and Thailand and Taiwan. And there was no tourists, and it was like another world, this was before tourism. So it really opened my eyes and gave me a sense of adventure. And also, I knew I'd go back to Asia. I hadn't gone to India yet. I knew I would at some point. And it really, I felt very, I had an affinity for David and Nancy because they traveled and they knew Asia. So I could relate to that. It was a journey that I took that was, frightening at first, but I had decided when I was 19 I wanted to go around the world, and so that's what I did.
And I'm excited to explore more about those travels, but I would like just to spend a little bit more time talking about asanas. And in particular, well, two topics. We'll start with my first one of interest. And it's something David and Nancy talked to you about the importance of just if your body's feeling sore, to take it easy, be gentle, and that relates to the first yama, ahimsa. What have you learned about that, ahimsa?
Well, yeah, you want to be gentle with yourself, not violent with yourself, of course, and that was certainly the idea in their teaching was to never push into pain, and if you were going through structural changes, to modify, or any physical pain, to modify the practice in any way you could, so there was no pain. So you're always aiming to do a pain-free practice. You're always being gentle and respectful of yourself, and understanding that, yeah, if you kept it up and well, it was very clear, if you modified it and did it less, then a few days later, you could get back into the depth of the practice and practice it in a way that was, designed to really challenge you. And some days you'd have to back off and modify it and just create a hatha yoga practice. So yeah, that was definitely a non-violence against yourself and against anybody else as well.
Hmm. So yeah, and as a martial artist, maybe you could help me understand this because I'm trying to come to grips with this. Yoga and martial arts started the pretty similar time for me, but my yoga practice was mostly asana based, and the last few years I've been more leaning into the eight limbs and the philosophy part of yoga, the depth of yoga, and it's really putting me at conflict with training martial arts because martial arts is violent. And how, as a martial artist yourself, like is that something I should give up, martial arts, because it's
Well,
not very
I don't think
ahimsa.
so. Well, it depends what you're doing when you do the martial arts. I mean, I love learning, like in karate, katas, the 2 minute, a 2 minute form
Yeah,
that you could practice yourself.
yeah,
I did do um, sparring, and I did exhibition sparring for a little while when I
yeah,
was a teenager. And but I recognized that it wasn't, although it was interesting, it would always turn into a fight, like a real
yeah,
fight,
yeah,
because somebody would you'd block something and it would hurt, and you get pissed off, or the other person
yeah.
would get pissed off, even though you weren't supposed to make contact, and then it would, in my experience, it would inevitably turn into a real fight for your life. And so I stopped doing that. And then I eventually kind of got out of karate because, for at least going to classes, because they were becoming more and more aggressive. But
Yeah.
I recognized then later in Hawaii, I started to get in touch with Tai Chi, some Tai Chi practices, and I saw that, it's the same form, but there's nobody there. You're just pretending you're fighting somebody else. So those are the things that really appeal to me. And also, when I studied kung fu, I learned in Taipei from an amazing teacher there, and he also had sparring at the end of the class. But I told him, I'm not into it. I don't want to spar. And so he said, okay. And he was, totally receptive to it. In karate, at least in the beginning, the first day, the Japanese master said, you never get into a fight. You're learning, and that's really what the truth about martial arts. They're like a real fight. You might learn the techniques, but you should never get into a real fight, because you're learning techniques that are very life threatening. You're not fooling around in martial arts, and they want to end the fight as quickly as possible. And they can, real martial artists can injure somebody critically instantly. So with speed and the right attack. So the teacher said you should always run away if there's a fight happening. Run away. So I always appreciated that, and
Mhm.
but the techniques are incredible, especially when you recognize that Tai Chi and Kung Fu are linked. Because to me, Tai Chi is just slowed down Kung Fu movements, and it takes incredible strength and depth. as you probably know, if you go to any park in the morning, there's people practicing Tai Chi, and if somebody's leading it, usually you can never tell who's the teacher till the end, but you just join in and try and follow along, and it's complex, deep,
Yes.
strengthening movements, balance. So I love to now over the last probably 8 years, I integrate elements of Tai Chi, Kung Fu, and karate movements and positions, and slight, punches and kicks, but in slow form, sometimes a little faster, just to get
Mhm.
people's bodies in altered positions, because it relates directly, certainly, to yoga. I
Oh,
don't
I
know
could
if you know, but sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I could see that, and especially with the moving and the breathing as you move through the different forms as well.
Yeah, and yeah, the thing is, yeah, I was going to mention somebody brought me a bunch of photos of these pictures in Shaolin temples in China
Hmm.
of yogis,
Hmm.
paintings of yogis that were up in
Hmm.
the Shaolin temples. So, the yogis had come through China, and I think you probably know where the first martial art comes from, they say,
No, no.
from southern China.
Okay,
I'm sorry, southwestern India,
okay.
Kerala. They use these curved swords. I forget the name of the form, but it's an amazing form. And they say that, the yogis were carrying some of these practices because they were yogis, these guys learning these practices. And they brought them into China. They brought yoga and maybe some of the first type of martial arts movements. And it sprung forth, I think, from that point.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, it's an ancient art for sure.
yeah. I really see the opportunity for me to evolve my practice with Tai Chi, Qigong. So thank
Yeah,
you
I love
for
qigong too.
So thank you for sharing that with me. And it was also interesting how you kind of talked about the history of where there is yogis they saw like martial arts and yogis in ancient times. I also heard you
Yeah,
speaking about that in Egypt and in old
right.
hieroglyphics they saw yogis. So I feel the lineage of yoga goes back further than history even tells.
Well, yeah, to me, I've been traveling for a long time, and I went to Egypt like 6 times, and I went down to Karnak. And the first time I was there, the Temple of Karnak in Luxor on the Nile, I saw the, the yoga represented in hieroglyphs. I'd been doing yoga for 10 years at that point, 1986, 87. And when I saw it, and my friends there that were kind of guides in Egypt were telling me that the Temple of Karnak is the oldest, biggest, most elaborate temple in the world, and it had yoga carved into it, and nobody knows how old it is. They date it at certain, 5, 6 or 7 thousand years old, or 5 to 7, but some of my friends there said it could be anywhere from 7 to 84,000, 80,000 years old. And there's some indication of how that could be possible. But it's certainly the oldest representation of spinal twists and shoulder stands and wheel. So it's like thousands of years ahead of when it appeared in India, it seems. But people were exchanging information from a long, long time ago. So the Egypt was known. People would travel to Egypt and receive teachings and breath and meditation and communicating with the soul and the spirit. And I think, yeah, that's what I think yoga is ultimately soul work. And the Egyptians were all into that, as well as India, Indian classical yoga. It's affecting your soul and strengthening your vision and all that. So it's very
Hmm.
ancient. And I think that's even like, we mentioned earlier, even if people come to some gymnastics type of yoga and the teacher is teaching some aspect of breath, they're dropping into an ancient study, and it's going to have its effects no matter how experienced the teacher is. So when teachers have, and there are great teachers all over the world now. I mean, it's exploded. So there are numerous teacher training programs that I think really kind of impact the depth and the ancestral guidelines, of these practices. So it's having an effect, as you know, all over the world. It's everywhere, and you see it in advertising every day. When you're buying a house, somebody's doing a yoga position, or buying a car. Or, I don't know how they really fit it all in, but it's everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's a very positive thing, because people are dropping into ancient teachings, whether they know it or not. And if it inspires them a little, and they recognize that, well, maybe this teacher isn't giving them everything they want, they can seek out other teachers, and then they'll keep going deeper and deeper into the practice. So it's an evolving evolutionary circle that's spread all over the world, which was one of the amazing criteria of shamanism, you could say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many topics to go from that as well. Let's just start with this one. So yeah, there's levels of teachers, and like you, I believe that all yoga is good, because it just gives them a glimmer of the possible. It gives them the taste of that infinite, the divine within us all, the infinite now. Um, and that said, you've learned from so many teachers, and practice and sat with. What makes a great teacher, in your opinion?
Um, well, my girlfriend is a great teacher. She's got a lot of patience with me. A very positive aspect in my life. But yeah, I think that's one of the great teachers is relationship, and it's of course related to yoga too. But yeah, patience and gentleness, and I think a great teacher wants people to be independent, and not recognize that they're nurturing independence and freedom with practices like this, and that you learn from a teacher for a period of time, and you eventually, doesn't matter how long, but sooner the better, you start doing it yourself, and it becomes this personal practice where you're totally free to do it how you want to do it, or as best as you can, keeping up with the guidelines that you've been exposed to. So
Mm-hmm.
those are all aspects. I think that's one of my favorite ones, is recognizing that people are learning a system that creates independence and personal vision, and adds decades of active energy onto your own life, and helps you remain strong and age a fraction slower than if you weren't doing yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit slower, I think. So yeah, keeps giving more and more depth to your life. So but independence is one of the great gifts I've learned from yoga, which I
Mm-hmm.
had anyway, I think, but it nurtured that. And I
Yeah.
think in Canada, there's a lot of that kind of thinking.
Yeah. And getting away from the guru, right? Ram Dass, he
Yeah,
talks about when you know how to listen, everyone is the guru.
yeah.
And
Everybody's teaching you something.
yeah, so I think
You just
that's like
have
a
to be, yeah, I was just going to say, you just have to try to be empathetic and sensitive and open. And you get messages all the time from every direction.
Mhm, mhm. So we talked about those ancient hieroglyphics showing yoga poses, many thousand years later, I guess, or who knows when those hieroglyphics were even put there. But the first kind of written record of yoga in India was Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And his out of his 196 sutras, only three of them
Hmm.
pertained to asana. 2.46, 2.47, and 2.48, I believe. Are you familiar with those sutras?
Oh, yeah, I've read them. Uh, I've 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 read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I can't say I can repeat most of it, but I think it was a conglomeration of a lot of different ideas, and it's a lot of it's metaphorical. But
Yeah,
yeah, what was your? Did you have something you wanted to
yeah.
discuss about it in particular?
Yeah, so from my understanding of those sutras, asanas, like the physical postures, they're meant to be effortless. Um, some like it starts off, find steadiness and comfort, um, ease in the postures, make it effortless. Um, Connect with your inner peace so that you could transcend beyond dualities and the vrittis of life, the highs and lows do not affect you. Um, and that's my current understanding. It could be interpreted in many ways, but so that's what I try to practice on my mat, and off the mat, and also when I teach.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's the message. That's the message for sure. It's you take all those things you said and apply it to regular life.
Yeah, and not try so hard. And I feel like a lot of people with their asanas and in your background of Ashtanga yoga, I think a lot of people there's a lot of efforting. So yeah, if you just want to speak about like that, like yeah, like when I see people and postures in their faces, just like, and they're not breathing, and okay, that doesn't seem very calm. And I think I try to just remind people, it's like about your energetic vibration in the pose, and especially at the end of class, the shavasana, where your teachers, David and Nancy, really recommended you just to like soak up that savasana, and I also love doing that and love encouraging that, just to really remember that frequency, that vibe, so that we could take that off the mat with us, that inner peace, that calmness, that equanimity.
Yeah, well, that is definitely what we're aiming for at the end of the practice. I think as you realize it's a small portion of your day. You've got to. It's a great opportunity to do something physical that is very detailed and scientific, like I said earlier, and well thought out, and a balanced form if you do it in a balanced way. But like you said, you good teachers are constantly reminding people to focus on the breath. The pose is secondary to the breath. The internal locks, the breath, and then you do the pose uh, in a comfortable way, and not an unpleasant way. Now, one teacher, Joe Kramer, used to say that if it's not pleasant, you're doing it wrong. It's just like this idea of modifying the practice so there's no pain. You're not
Hmm.
if you're regular at the practice, which is the beauty of this, and you really just get into it in a very focused way each day and doing it gently when you need to and putting a little more effort into it when you have the strength and the concentration, then you notice you're you do get incredibly strong and flexible and vital and balanced. It improves everything. So, and it is a scientific technique to do that, as well as, affecting, like we mentioned, brainwave pulse and internal, the nervous system, which affects all the internal organs. Breath has this very powerful uh, effect immediately on the vagus nerve. Breath controls heart rate. So when people are stressing in a practice, if I'm there, if I'm teaching, I definitely get them to relax their face and concentrate on the breath and make sure they're not creating any pain. And I don't push people. I sometimes give light directional adjustments, but just looking for symmetry. And so I want people to do it safely and learn a practice that they can do themselves safely. And over time, the progress is phenomenal. That's what I noticed because we would do 6 months a year with David and Nancy, and then they'd go off to India. And as soon as they left, of course, everybody had to keep doing the practice themselves, or eventually there were some other classes, but um, everybody was disciplined because they'd been doing it every 6 days a week for 6 months. So after that, we were all kind of hooked into the practice and we could maintain it ourselves.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think
And
that's
I understood clearly um, to to just to modify it. Yeah,
Yeah. I
go
think
ahead.
that's what's so important, the process to the destination, to that end pose. And to me, that's what this podcast, these conversations is called Welcome to the Winner Circle. And that what it means, that's what it means to be a winner to me, is to be in the process, to not only to be in the process, but to just dissolve in that process with um, surrender and faith and humility, like Ishvara Pranidhana, just a total dissolving in the now, a stepping outside of your egoic self and just disappearing in the journey versus the destination. Like we live in a very destination orientated society. When I get this job, when I get this career, when I get this car, I'll be happy. And then we get there and it's now what? And it's similar to with yoga poses. I think the ego has a lot of people like wanting that end posture, but like the sweetness, the juice, the special sauce is the process there, as you said. Um, so my
That's a great way
question,
to put it. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
so I have two questions for you from that. First, what does it mean to be a winner to you? We'll start with that, and then the second one pertains to the ego.
I don't care about winning. I don't want to lose, but I prefer not to lose. But I just want to be happy every day, and use the techniques that I can to be in a state of joy and uh, doing the things that I like to do. And I think if people find what they like to do, then and they focus on it, then they can certainly you can create incredible happiness from yoga because you realize you're feeling good. It's healing you, strengthening you, and that's a very joyful thing in this world. And it also teaches you don't need that much. I think people forget when they come into yoga, or they don't know that until there were schools, which I think the first school was in 1930 in India, started by the Maharaja of Mysore and Krishnamacharya, the first public school. If you wanted to learn yoga, you had to go off with the sadhus, guys who had nothing and were totally happy and physically strong. And, we're talking about Agori sadhus or Naga Babas, not beggars, but people who were doing practices and living by the rivers and wandering through the country and not living anywhere and demonstrate and carrying yoga. That's where these practices kind of were rooted in this magical characters that were had no possessions. Um, I mean, I can't do that, but I can certainly recognize that you can be very happy with very little through breath and through taking care of yourself and eating clean food and drinking clean water and spending more time in nature. So, all these things help clarify life and what's important and what we need to do to really maintain health and vitality. I mean, if you're healthy and you've got some energy, then that can add to your joy and happiness. But certainly you can be happy in any situation, even if you're struggling with some imbalance or disease.
Mhm,
So I prefer to stay positive about things, and I think yoga really helps fulfill that.
mhm, mhm. Another thing that helps you feel good as you, in quotations, win, in addition to nature, clean food, feeling good, is being of service. How are you currently doing that?
How? Sorry, you broke up there for a second. How what?
How are you being of service? That's another way I know that like that's another way that you incorporate on your path to feel good. You share and you teach. Um, what does that look like for you in your life today? How are you sharing and
Well,
being of
I'm
service?
I've been traveling for a long time, and I recognized early on that this was certainly learning these practices and techniques and explorations was a gift to me. And if I could pass it on gently to other people, then it was a service. And so it's an ultimate service for sure. I mean, I've taught for close to 50 years, I suppose, or 47 years, 46, something like that. And whoever shows up to my class, I recognize it's amazing that they're showing up. If it's one person or if it's 60. And you know, I've taught plenty of classes where I had a couple of people, but they turned out to be like amazing individuals that were drawn to this, and so that we could meet somehow and share some ideas. So it is a service to I think for anybody teaching these practices, and if you're dedicated to what you love to do, I think you'll be covered. Like I only teach by invitation. If nobody invites me, I don't go. I don't try to manufacture places that I want, I want to go to. Usually, it's if somebody invites me, then I accept and I try to fit it in, and that's been an amazing gift. And understanding that I'm not creating. I don't have to create it. Fortunately, I've been traveling for so long, meeting groups of people that a lot of them have become teachers and started their own schools. So then they invite, but so I've been very lucky in that way because I recognize that's for me, that's how it should be. Some other teachers may feel differently, but I don't actively seek out places. Fortunately, I just accept invitations, and that works well for me
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah.
But and I'll tell you the truth. Like some people say to me, well, what if nobody shows up? It, well, it's happened in a few places. Nobody shows up, but it's great. I go to a movie or
Yeah. It's happening for you.
Exactly.
I know I really respect and admire that you teach when you're invited. Um, your beginnings in yoga, in terms of financial, like how much you pay to take those classes, were donations. So your early teachers in Hawaii, they accepted like I heard you say like food, fruit, weed, um, time. If you have money, you could give it. And I feel like that's where yoga was, and it has turned into a business. So how have you kind of navigated that in terms of charging for your teaching?
Well, whenever I get invited someplace, if it's like workshop or I do recommend or ask the host to invite whoever they want for free or reduced price. So, or invite their teachers for free or whatever, so that people can come and who normally might not be able to pay anything and have access to it. When I started teaching, I I didn't charge. One of the yeah, I went to Goa, India. My friend Cliff was teaching there. Who learned all four series. He was in his mid 40s, and he wanted me to help him in Goa. And he taught by donation. And after 4 months, he'd have like $14. So we didn't really split a lot of money, but he was covered. People would buy him dinner, or somehow he got by. He slept outside or in an ashram, or he didn't care, and so he was a great living example. And then, so then when I started getting invited places, and people would say, "Well, what's your charge?" I'd say, "Just donation." They go, "Oh, well, we can't figure that out." But they would, and it would work out sometimes better than if I'd created a price.
Mhm.
People would give what they wanted. And then later I was teaching with a friend, and he said, we got to charge something just to give people a field. So we used to charge $5 donation. If people couldn't afford it, then they could pay what they want. When teachers invite me now also to different places and they say, well, what do you charge? I say, just figure out what is comfortable for your region and we'll work from there. And along the same lines, other people, guests can come for free and if necessary or they want to or whatever. So, and it's always worked out. Somehow I have enough to get by to get to the next place. And I think with several of my friends that are really great teachers, the same thing, you know, for humanity, because it's really increasing people's energy and healing and focus and clarity, and they get cleaner and, you know, has so many benefits. It's beyond explanation, really. And
Mm-hmm.
it's become a worldwide network. So you have, you know, you have, I don't know how many tens of millions of people doing yoga, but it could be hundreds of millions at this point. And it's a positive network that's developing out of this, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it is. It's one of the most positive ancestral gifts we've ever seen. So it's a mass movement. That's what people don't realize now. There's a lot of power in this movement. People aren't, it's personal power, though, you know, just to uh, do what you need to do in your community. And the other thing you know, I got involved with was this thing in Thailand, Children of the Forest, which is this amazing village for children that have been that are from broken families, or families can't really afford to take care of them, or they've been trafficked, and they make their way to this amazing village in northwest Thailand. And I was introduced to this by some of my friends who have been sponsoring it, and they take care of hundreds of kids and reach out to thousands in the region. This is the northwestern area of Thailand, where 2 million Burmese have crossed into Thailand. You know, they're stateless, they don't have papers, they have no work, they have no money. And so there's a lot going on in this area of the world. And somehow through my friends, you know, I like to just promote awareness of Children of the Forest, and that kind of level of taking care of children in a beautiful village in the forest, where they're educated in Montessori schooling techniques, and learn several languages, and learn different skills, and also just receive a great education. But it's a kind of a solution for immigration, really. That
Mm-hmm.
rather than putting people in, you know, horrendous prison camps and torturing them, you know, this creates incredibly positive, gifted children that are ready to do anything. So
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of kids that take care of each other, you know, and a small group of adults, and it's so this is something that I've also become involved with, and I like to tell people about.
Yeah, that's so special. What's that called again?
Children of the Forest
Children of the
in
Forest.
Songkla, Thailand. And it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it was started by a British sociologist, a social worker, who was on vacation in Thailand. His name was Daniel Hobson. And he was just on vacation in that area, and he saw all these kids running around, and he found out they didn't have families, or they were from broken families. And so he thought, I got to do something. So he said, he thought, I'm going to start a school. So he just got a building and took a few of the kids and started, you know, educating them for a few hours every day. And then, but the amazing thing is, to show you how these things work, which I'm sure you're aware of. He put an ad in the Bangkok Post saying, seeking funding for a children's school and living facilities for all these kids that are, you know, homeless or broken homes. And my friend Matthew Kelly and his wife were in Bangkok and saw this ad, and they were just looking for a place to support philanthropically. And so they went to see him, and they realized what was going on. So they agreed to fund it for a while. And they acquired a piece of land just outside of Songkla in this beautiful forest. And they built all these structures, simple bamboo rooms and structures and meeting halls, and gradually started getting, you know, picking kids there. Police would bring kids to them, or um, parents would come with their kids. They desperate for help, and they took in all these kids, and it's been an expanding, evolving situation ever since.
Yeah,
So
wow.
things
It's
like that.
beautiful.
Anybody can do something like that. Yeah, I think it could be a worldwide thing, if people realized. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, and we need that, like especially in the North American school system. But I have a feeling it's worldwide where children are being indoctrinated in schools or sitting in desks, taught to be obedient and workers. What have you learned from this school in Thailand that teachers and parents can bring into their classrooms today to kind of make a bit of a change and shift that wave?
Well, this when it's done in a loving way, I think when your main expression is love and care and empathy, then it kind of feeds itself. So you have a few British social workers and a group of Thai teachers and psychologists that kind of take care of the kids, and then feed them information and just support them. And there's like 250 kids that would come in every day from lunch and school on top of the group of kids that were living there. So they were dealing at the time with 400 kids a day, 500 kids a day, and if but it's only a small group of adults. So the older kids really take care of the younger kids. The Thai people they have so much compassion and sensitivity, probably from the Buddhist nature or the Buddhist nature surrounding them, that the older kids look after the younger kids. And you get kids that show up that are despondent, that have been trafficked and are brought in by a policeman, and they take the kid in, and for a few weeks he's very quiet, but all these other kids just flock to him or her and bring them out of their shell and just help them come back into being a kid again.
Hmm.
And then I just, one other thing I want to say, they educate they do a full-on educational program there, and send some older kids to university. And then the older kids realize, I want to go back there and help. And so the kids, when they graduate from university, they come back there and they want to participate to help, uh, keep helping the place evolve.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Another transform. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, well, you have all these people that have so much money, whether it's Jeff Bezos or, you know, get Google owners, or that don't know what to do with their money, and or Elon Musk, who have hundreds of billions of dollars. These things would be so easy to fund, to create a beautiful school system near the borders all over the world, and great teachers, and help people learn trades. Like these kids, they're not, it's not regular school, they're playing most of the time, and
Hmm.
they're eating
Hmm.
together, and it's a Montessori school system. So they're trying to give in different values. So the kids, it's not a regular, yeah, like you said, most school was developed to control and manipulate people into the workforce. And so
Yeah.
once you kind of realize that, and realize that you can educate people like in the Krishnamurti schools, um, on a whole other level, as well as teaching them physics and biology and mathematics and history and sociology and all these things, biology. There's a whole new way to educate kids that can be done, and there are programs that are already doing it, like in the Green School in Bali, for example. But Children of the Forest is an exceptional situation.
Hmm. Hmm. One other thing that like I take passion in teaching children and introducing in schools here in Canada is yoga, breath work, and mindfulness. And I feel introducing that to children at an early age can have ripples beyond our knowing. What has your experience been like introducing yoga to children and working with children?
Well, I taught at Children of the Forest, and they were just like fantastic. Totally. That's why I went out there originally. My friend wanted me to go teach a little yoga to the kids and play some music, and we just had a blast. It was like an insane, crazy class with 80 kids or 100 kids. But Yeah, I have other friends who teach mindfulness. This one of my friends is Karen Winter, and she has an organization. It just I'll remember what it's called. Hey, can we take a break for 1 minute,
Yeah, sure.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me. I'm just gonna come right back. So I'll put it, or you just hang in there.
Yeah, I'll just hang in here.
Okay, hold on.
I'll
I'll be right back.
yes.
Hello, Derek.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, I just had to take a break, and also I wanted to think about what her organization is called, which is it's Mission B, and missionbe.org, and she
Mission
does.
B.
Yeah, she's really cool. She is she was a social worker, but she got into teaching meditation and yoga to kids. And then she helped introduce it in New York school systems and California school systems and other countries. So she has a big network. So I like to really kind of mention her, missionb.org. Really
Yes.
an amazing program for teachers or anybody to learn techniques of yoga and meditation for children.
Beautiful. So when you teach children, what do you try to get them to understand and remember?
Uh, well, I just teach them the same way I teach adults, but if they're really young, I mean, I play with them and just get them into wild movements, just trying all kinds of crazy poses, which I did in places like Children of the Forest, which they have all ages, and they're willing to try anything. So I wasn't like teaching them Ashtanga yoga. I was just teaching them animal poses and other movements that they would have fun with, and which yoga is play anyway, and it should be the same for adults. And I do kind of do the same thing with adults. I mean, I used to teach. Uh, what would I say? I used to teach strict Ashtanga yoga when I started because that's how I learned it, but then as I got familiar with other forms of yoga through other teachers and doing yoga with them, they'd show me something, I'd try it, and if I liked it, I'd incorporate it in my practice. In the same way I brought in martial arts, I don't teach strict Ashtanga routines. I can, but I prefer to play with them, and depending on the group and the level of the group, go through all kinds of different things and make it very innovative if possible. But I do appreciate when teachers teach the exact form and stick with the form. But some are allowed to innovate and do whatever the
Hmm.
hell they want, and I'm one of those.
Yeah. So through all the different styles of yoga you learned from in practice, what is the thread that you see is true within them all?
Well, the breath, that's the first thing, and the internal locks, like holding the locks, but making the lungs expand slowly and contract, and lifting the stomach as you lift your chest when you inhale, using the muscles. So, so the breath the depth of the breath is the key. And if you learn to focus on the breath, then that strengthens the practice, because you learn to breathe slow, deep breath in simple poses and also in very deep poses. And that's your goal, is to be able to breathe in a relaxed, very deep way throughout all the practice. And if you stick at it with for years or months even, you'll be able to get, all kinds of levels of ability that you don't expect, because it's a quantum science. That's what I feel.
Mm-hmm,
When you
mm-hmm,
learn it correctly and you gently and you practice it regularly, then you see this rapid expansion of your energy and abilities. But
mm-hmm.
it's a challenge. There's a challenge in yoga. It's not like you're trying to, I got to do this or got to do that, but there are amazing challenges. And if you want to go to another level, a good teacher can show it to you. But the challenge is just doing the practice every day too, doing the practice every day.
And then you become it on and off the mat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
For a few
Uh,
seconds every day.
yeah. Okay. So, similarly but different. So, through all the countries you visited, so Europe, Thailand, Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, India, Canada, US, et cetera, what is the common thread amongst all those countries and all the people that you've been able to pinpoint?
Well, it's certainly uh, part of it is understanding that this is a universal teaching that everybody who learns it carefully and slowly loves. And it's not for everybody, but it's designed for everybody. So not everybody is willing to do the discipline or do a little every day, but um, I meet great, amazing groups of people all over the world that are, as humans, they love the practice. And the interesting thing I think about, like China and Thailand and Taiwan and Southeast Asia, the people, so many millions of people are coming into yoga, and they have this other level of flexibility and strength because their diet's different from the West, and they have incredible flexibility. And um, but all over the world, I'm seeing that, just to increase the level of practice. But
Hmm.
it's really interesting that it happens, seems to happen faster for Southeast Asian people, better diets and more vegetarian and lighter diets, and genetically predispositioned for incredible flexibility and strength and balance.
Wow. Beyond the yoga, what have you been able to see as a commonality from your lens? So beyond the yoga, just the people of all these countries, what is the universal thing that you found that connects us
Well,
all?
it's something very beautiful in humanity that's going on all around the world, and everybody, if you smile at somebody or you're kind to somebody, they're kind back, and so that's a common thread, humanity, and has nothing to do with yoga. And many people are in tune with the spirit without having to do any kind of practice, or in tune with being kind and respectful. And I see that everywhere. I've seen very little violence or aggressiveness. It happens occasionally, but I think most of humanity is in a very peaceful state, and they're just working on, taking care of themselves and their families and surviving. And I don't see much negativity. Um, but of course, there's areas of the world that are poor and struggling more. So that exists also. But there's a phenomenal compassion in whether you're in a slum or, in areas of that are struggling, more difficulty. They're taking care of each other. So it's amazing to see or to realize when I've been to India and seen phenomenal poverty, but you realize that people are taking care of each other and they're looking
Mhm.
out for each other in these communities, and that's a phenomenal thing. My
Mhm.
first experiences in India showed me that in the poorest place in the world, people are looking out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the poorest slums I've ever seen.
Yes, yes, that's beautiful. Sometimes, though, fear gets in the way of this, and it gets in the way of our kindness and our looking after others. And it also gets in the way of us pursuing our dreams. What have you learned about fear?
Hold on, my AirPods stopped. Okay, I'm just
You're
listening
okay
to
still.
you. Say that last thing again.
Yeah, so one thing that gets in the way of this kindness and this connectivity and caring for others is fear. And people start looking after just themselves rather than the collective. Fear also interferes with people from going for their dreams, for pursuing their passion, and they get stuck in the rat race. What have you learned about fear and how have you used it as an ally on your journey?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I recognized, I think, at an early age that I had to step into my fear and face it, whatever it was. One of my first big fears was going on this trip around the world when I was 19 because I
Yeah.
hadn't met anybody who'd done it, and I knew it was going to be a totally new thing and new environments, not knowing anybody, and but I knew I had to do it. And when I made that first step and went to the first place, I was a little distraught for a day or two. But then I met somebody that played music, and we started playing together, and suddenly all that disappeared, and I was on my way, and I was released from. I realized at that point, you know, you had to step into your fear to overcome it, and also on some of these shamanic explorations and journeys, I've also recognized clearly that you have to step into your fear and every day, perhaps, and whatever you're afraid of, you got to do if you want to beat it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned, you know, the great fear is the fear of death, I suppose, for everybody too, and the fear of aging, and or getting sick. You know, we're all, according to Buddha, you know, everybody will get ill and shrivel up and turn into a prune and pass on. But or according to what we've seen, but there are ideas and teachings and thinking processes that can help make that a beautiful experience rather than something to fear. And of course, yoga is one of those things. You can't stop aging, but you can slow it down and treat your body well and eat well, and hopefully you'll have more energy and vitality as you age. I think that's pretty clear through these practices. The yogis were known long before it became a popular exploration. They were known to live long, healthy lives. And
Mm-hmm.
I think when you do that, the karma is relatively clean, and transition can be a beautiful, positive, affirming experience. So, and once you realize that it's just an evolutionary door, and you're moving on to another distinct level of energy and knowledge or understanding, then it makes it a little easier to face that transition. So,
Yes.
so I've learned that through yoga and the teachings of yoga and the teachings of mythology and the teachings of shamanic practices and circles where it's clearly revealed how to, if you got the clarity, you can deal with these things, whether it's having energy when you're ill or clarity or happiness or joy, no matter what your situation is. And also facing death with a very positive understanding
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what the process likely is. So
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And love helps. in that process as well. And love has been a theme all throughout this conversation. Through your journey thus far, what have you learned about love? What does that mean to you?
Well, there's so much to, so many ways to answer that, but I do the best I can to try to be a loving person. I don't always, I'm not always able to do it, but I recognize that that's the way to be, and to be kind and generous and sensitive and empathetic. So I'm constantly, that's an endless exploration, and also a great meditation, is to be conscious. And that's the essence of yoga too, and tantra. You know, it's to see the sacred in everything. And so if you and to recognize that we're in infinity. It's not a destination. We're already in it.
Yeah.
And just going to carry on because it's infinite. So we're infinite, and our energy will carry on in some other way. So love, being loving is a good karmic practice for sure. The best option available.
Yes, it creates ripples. It creates deep ripples beyond our knowing. Thank you so much, Danny, for everything you've shared so far. And this conversation has
Oh,
been really enlightening.
thank you. Appreciate
Yes,
your ideas and your
yes.
understanding.
Thank you. I close every conversation with a couple of questions, and we're at that point. So here they are. This first one's a big one. Through all the highs and lows, that is this hero's journey, that is your life experience, what you feel has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment to share with me and everyone tuning in?
Oh, well, um, best is yet to come. And also, there's nothing to fear in death. And I think I'm working on that, but I understand it. And I think to remain, like we've been talking about, very positive, and recognizing that how you live your life, you know, if you try to live your life fearlessly and do what your soul is compelled to direct you, how it's compelled to direct you, then the same thing happens, I believe, when you die. If you worry or fear, you're going to create some brief negative experience. But if rather you know, the yogis use breath. They just breathe very deeply as they're making the transition to help alter and strengthen their awareness, strengthen the heart, of course. I think if you use those ideas, then it'll be a rewarding, pleasant, I don't know about pleasant, but it'll be a very powerful, evolving experience that helps us move into the next phase of our evolution. We've been here, maybe we've been here 1,000 times, and we'll be here another 1,000 times. So that's part of it all.
Thank you for that. In 3 words, how would you describe the life experience you are having on this earth? So if it could be just 3 separate words that come to mind that would describe the experience you're having in your reality of
Well,
this.
fortunately, I'm involved in a nice, beautiful relationship. So there's love involved, and I see that around me too. And I've been going to some cool places around the world. I still travel a lot, and I've been adventurous to explore these places. So I love adventure, and trying to be as kind as possible in every situation, aware and conscious. So yeah, that's how I would describe it for the moment.
Sounds divine. Sounds divine. I have a side question.
Yeah.
And it pertains to your relationship. Through what you've learned, through the various relationships you've been on your path, what are the keys to a healthy, strong relationship?
Good question. I've been working on that. Well, trying to be a team, and also be sensitive to your partner's needs, and what they desire also in a relationship, and caring for each other and compromising when necessary, and yeah, working on being a beautiful team, a wild, beautiful team.
Amazing. Okay, my final question. Um, we've examined your past, we've examined your present. Let's go into the future. And I'm not sure how far in the future this is, but let's bring ourselves alongside an 85-year-old Danny Paradise. Who is this 85-year-old man? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? And what are the predominant feelings in your being?
Well, if I get to 85, that's next year, then that'll be great. No, I'm kidding. But let's see, if I get there, that'll be really a gift in itself. I'd like to be in a loving, kind relationship, or have loving, kind relationships then, and still be living in nature and as often as possible for as long as possible. Maybe I'd be traveling and teaching a little bit, slowing down a little as it is, but being able to share the practices. And I continue to play music, and I hope I keep writing songs and performing. So I hope that's all possible, even up until that point.
And what are the predominant feelings in that 85-year-old vessel?
Oh, I think, gratitude is always a great, giving thanks for every day. If you get to 85, that's amazing. Giving thanks to the spirit and the life force surrounding us, and being in tune with the soul and what the soul is constantly advising us and calling for. Maybe having some communication with the ancestors. Yeah, feeling of love and friendship.
I invite you. I invite you just to close your eyes and just connect with your breath for a moment and just really feel into those emotions of love, friendship, gratitude, thanks, connection with spirit, with the ancestors. And I'm going to bring us back to the present day, Danny. And that 85-year-old man, he sends you a message. What does he whisper in your ear?
Have fun.
Thank you. Well, have fun, take it easy. And I've been having so much fun with you, Danny. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. For people wanting to connect with you, they can find you on your website, dannyparadise.com. And you're also on Instagram at Danny_Paradise108. Any last closing words?
Oh, yeah. If I do retreats all over the world, and workshops, so people can just check my website for under retreats and workshops. And I do one in Thailand every year at this amazing wildlife sanctuary. It's a gibbon ape sanctuary where all the bungalows and the yoga deck and the restaurant float on this pristine lake. And they can see the place at jungleyoga.com, but it's a phenomenal place. And in the future, I may be doing some retreats in Sumba, off the island of southeast off Bali and Fiji. I teach in Crete every year in the fall as well for a series of retreats at Yoga Rocks. But they can check me out. I have a music videos to a bunch of my songs on my YouTube channel. So if people have an opportunity to check some of those out, I've been lucky to play with amazing players all over the world. And that's it. Thanks so much. It's very nice to you. I appreciate your energy and your ideas and clarity. So, thank you. And say hi to Ryan. Ryan,
yes,
guy is a great teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. To close every episode, we bring our fist in for a digital fist bump. Stepping into the winner circle. Thank you so much, Danny.
Thank you. Great to talk to you.
Great to talk with you.
Again one day.
Yeah, absolutely.